Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revit Snippets, great tips you can learn in just a few minutes. In today's lesson, we'll see how easy we can recreate those three columns here as you can see in this building, and also make them fully parametric in Revit. The final result will be something like this. Not only will we create this tree with all the required components, but I'll also show you how to quickly copy one column to several more to create this whole promenade very quickly. You can do this without placing each and every column one by one. In the top-down view, it will look something like this. We'll see how to use Revit adaptive components to create this tree family very quickly and easily. So, let's get started. I'm gonna close everything first. And the first step now is to create our first adaptive component. Let's go to Families, choose New. And you will want to go for this template here, Generic Model Adaptive. Alright, now the sequence is this. Let's see the reference building again. So firstly, we will create the main trunk of the tree. From here to there will be one single element. And then you can kind of adapt this family here to make the branches. Because even though those branches are a bit smaller, they are quite similar in geometry to the trunk. And then finally we'll create connector elements in the middle to bind all those items into a single entity. Alright, let's create the trunk first. We can start by placing the first adaptive point from there. Just place it anywhere. And then I can select it, go to the front view, and copy it up. Let's say I want to put this at 7 meters for now. So you can now select both points and turn them into adaptive points using this Make Adaptive button. And as you can see, there are numbers on those points. In this case, when I place this component in the other family, this will be the first point I'm going to click, and this will be the second point. We are now ready to create the profiles for our trunk. Let's go to Reference and make a reference circle. We now need to place it on the reference plane. Instead of placing it on face, we need to click this button here to change the placement mode to by reference plane. And then I can click on this Set Reference Plane button. And then click this horizontal plane of placement point number 1. You can see its highlights there. We can now start drawing the circle from the point as a center point. This temporary dimension, I can now click on this button here to make it permanent. We can now select this dimension and turn that into a parameter. Let's call this one Radius Start. Okay. We can now do the same for the top point. Let's go to Reference, Circle, Place on Plane. Set the plane now to be this horizontal one. And make the second circle. Get that dimension there. Select it. I can now turn this into Radius End. You can now select them both and click on this Create Form button. That's the geometry for our trunk. I can now change the dimension slightly, make it more realistic. Just go to Family Types now. And let's say we can have Radius Start equals 500. And then Radius End can be 300. Much better now. Before we forget, let's save this family and call this Trunk. We're now ready to create our actual tree family and then nest this family in there to create its trunk. Let's go to File, New, Family. And then select the same template from before, Model Adaptive. We can now start placing the first adaptive point again. So let's go to Reference Point, place one right there, select it and make it into an adaptive point. Next step, we need to create this reference point here where the connectors will be. So I need one point there to define how high this trunk is going to get. To do so, I can now go back to the point tool, but this time choose to place it on a reference plane. I can now set this plane to be this horizontal plane of this placement point number 1. Now make sure you place this point right on top of the first point and then escape to complete. I can now select the second point now and then just move it up. The distance doesn't matter much for now. but let's make it slightly predictable. So let me undo this move. Select the point one more time. And now instead of dragging it, I will move it up by a known amount. Let's do 7.5 meters. Those dimensions that I've been using, that are just for reference by the way. We can always change them later on using family parameters. Okay, it's time now for me to select them both and then make a reference line between them. We can do it by this spline through points tool. Turn on my properties window, get this line and make it into reference line. Ticking this box will do that. You know it's reference when it's green and it has those other planes surrounding it like this. Remember, we hosted this second point on the first one. That's why when I now move this point around, you can see that second point follows it closely. That's what we need. You wouldn't want to have a slanting tree column today, would you? That might be fun to create actually, but let's save it for another video. It's time now for us to create the skeleton for our branches of this tree. I can go to the top view now and then place 4 more points around this first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can now select them all like this and make them into adaptive points as well. It's time now for me to get them again and then move them up, maybe at 10 meters. Alright, now we can literally start connecting those dots. Let's select them in pairs. That's the first 2, and then use this same button from before to create lines connecting them. There's one line there. Second pair, third pair, and the final pair. Those lines are black because they are not reference lines. I can now get them all like this and make them green again. Here we go. You want to make them reference lines because those lines they don't show in the project, and you wouldn't want to see the skeleton of the element in the project. That won't be pretty. Let's now set the scene for placing our trunk in here. You will need to have an additional point like this. Make sure you place it in this mode here, on face and not on work plane, because now we want this point to freely snap to whatever you can get into in the model. So you can see now it's going to snap there where I can place it. Let's now go back to my trunk family and load it into my tree family. You are now prompted to place it using 2 placement points. The first one is obviously there. And the second one will be that point we just created. Here we go. Now surely there will be a time where we want to adjust this distance here between the connector point and the top of this trunk. Maybe you want to make the connectors between the trunk and the branches a bit longer. To do so, let's select this point here. Look closely at my status bar down there. When I try to pick the first point, it will say adaptive point. And that's the point you're getting from the trunk family. We have to press tab now to get the status bar to say reference points. That's when you can click. Here we go. This point, if I can drag it like this, you can see the trunk is updating nicely. But we wouldn't want to do it manually. Let's put in a parameter. This parameter should control the distance between this point and the connector point. To set it up, just go to Properties and change the measurement type of this point to segment length. And now you can see there's a number here, 6 meters and 700. If I change this to maybe 500, you can see it's going back all the way to the bottom because this measurement is taken from the bottom of my line. I can now change this measure from parameter to end because our endpoint of the line is up there. Now if I put this at 500, that's just what we need. To avoid typing this number every time, I'll turn this now using this button here into a parameter. Let's call this one base connector offset. Alright. Now that I can see, that's 500. So my trunk looks a bit thick now. Let's click on this trunk, go to edit type, and change dimensions slightly. Maybe up there on top, let's do radius of 200 and reduce the bottom radius to 400. Yeah, that's what I need. We should now start placing points for our branches. Let's do the same now 4 times. adaptive points. 1, 2, 3, 4. We should now make sure the distance from each of those points to the connector point will be the same. To do so, let's select them all like this. Back to here, do the same trick again. Change that to segment length. And set this number to maybe 400. You see, 3 of them are fine, but the last one is there on top. That's how I know it's referencing this measurement from the wrong side of the line. Let's change the side now, from beginning to end, and set it back to 400. Nice, we can now select them all like this, and turn this parameter into something called top connector offset. Here we go. We can now save this family because now there's something to lose there. Let's call this tree number 2. And it's time to create our branch family. Just like with the trunk, we can now make a new branch family as an adaptive component. Is that right? No, I'm just kidding with you. We can actually use this same family here for the trunk to create our branches, because at the end of the day, it's just a tube with 2 different radii, one at the start and one at the end. If I just make it a bit smaller, that trunk family can be also my branch. Let's do it now. Right click there on this trunk, choose create similar. And once again, we are prompted to place it by using 2 points. First point there for this branch, and the second point there. That's huge, as you can see. We can now click on this, go to edit type, duplicate it and call this branch. These numbers can now be different. Let's try, how about 100 there and 50 mil there. Looking great already. Let's make it 3 more times. So create similar, branch number 2, branch number 3, and the last one there, number 4. Amazing. It's time now for us to create our connector element, because we want to blend this geometry from here to there, getting smaller along the way. This is now where we indeed have to make the second adaptive components family. So same template again, adaptive generic model. And with this one, we would have to create more reference points for a smooth transition. Instead of 2 points, let's go for 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Get them all like this, make them adaptive. Ensure the numbers are sequential. You wouldn't want to have 1, 5, 6, 2, 3. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like this. I can now select them again and make a line connecting them. Make sure to turn that line as well into a reference line. It's time to create our profiles. I can now go to Reference, Circle, drawing on another work plane this time, and then set the work plane to be 1 here at point number 1. It can be tempting to get this plane here, you see, but actually we should tap a few times until you have this dashed reference plane showing up. Click it now to select it, and then draw the first profile. Get the dimension as well. Set the work plane 1 more time, but this time on this side. Again, tap until you get the dashed boundary of the reference plane there, and click to select. I'm gonna draw the second circle like this, and get the dimension. Let's turn this first dimension again into another parameter. Radius start. That's the same name from before, but I can reuse it because now it's a different family. This one is radius end. And now let's set the start to be 200 and the end to be 100. I'm just remembering my dimensions from the other family. And now I can now select this, select the path as well, and then also select the second profile. 3 elements selected. Let's create form. Here we go. Now I know that doesn't look so much like a realistic connector, but this is all you need to make it more realistic looking in the other family. Let's save it now. Call this connector, and then bring this into our tree number 2 family. Now if you haven't noticed, we need 6 placement points for this family, but so far I only have 2 or 3. So now let's press escape. We need to set the scene first. Just for making this easier, I will hide those elements temporarily only. Select them, go to here, choose hide element. And now we will have to make 4 more points for each connector. Because for the first connector I wanted to go like this, from this point up, do a small curve, and then connect to this other point. So that will be point number 1, this will be point number 6. I need to now create point number 2, 3 here, and 4 and 5 there. Super easy to do. Let's go here to reference point, place on the plane again, and just do 1, 2, 3, 4. The trick is to place new points closer to the existing points, because here we are just having more points to keep the starting and ending segments of this connector element straight. In the middle it should be free to make this nice curve. And because I love parameters so much, let's put them in here as well. I can now select these 2 points. Actually, you know what? Let's place them all and then we can put parameters in them at one go. So, 2 more points there, 2 more over here, and they are there as well. Now I can select the points closer to my connector points. Change this to be segment length again. And last time we went for maybe 500, I guess. Let's now put this at 4 or 300. And now I know that one has disappeared because it's gone way below there. Select it again and flip the endpoint. It's 400 again. Now this is when I realized maybe we should use the same offset parameter for the base and the top of the connector. Previously we did this as 500 from the connector point, and the top one's only 400. But even though it's possible to do, it will create a lot more work. So for now I'll make them the same. So these 4 points there, let's use offset base as well to give them the same value, 500. And now these points that I just created, let's select the ones closest to my connector points, and I use segment length of 400. Here we go. I seem to be missing one there because again on this point it's getting the measurement from the wrong side. Let's change that as well and use the same parameter. That should be 400 away from my connector point. So that's 500 mil away from this point. That's 400 away from this same point. For the last 4 points, let's make sure they are in between. So that's the one I haven't parameterized. I should place it somewhere in the middle of the other 2 on this same line. Let me go and select them quickly. Alright, now I can pick them like this because I have moved them to the middle just for you to see the process easier. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and don't forget the lower one here as well. Measurement, let's change to segment length again, and this time I can use 450. One more time, we have 2 points going in the same direction, so get them both like this. Set measurement to be from the end of the lines, and put in the same value, 450. Here we go, all together again. I can now select those middle points. There are 5 of them. And use another parameter for this. How about middle offset? I'm horrible with naming parameters, so feel free to use a better name if you like. Okay, looks like we are ready to place our connector elements. Save the family, go to create, and choose component. Connector is there already. I can now place the first one using 6 points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now I think you get the idea. By using more points, we have a smooth transition like this. Let's do the other ones. Let's use wireframe. And I can do the second one like this. So 1, 2, 3. By the way, don't be discouraged by this forbidden sign there. Usually with adaptive components, if you have a few more points to place, it may not know what to do. So just continue until the end. So 3, 4 point, 5 point, 6 point. Yes. Looking great. How about we do 2 more quickly? Alright, I can now escape to finish and then reset my view. Turn on shaded mode, and there you have them. It's quite nice if you ask me. Now, I know the radius isn't perfect, that's why you have kind of a bow over there and something going on over here. But at this level of detail, at this stage of the project, this is mainly for conceptual modeling, so you can now be free to change those radius to make it look better. I will do it very quickly now. So I've done it, mainly just changing a few radius of this region here and this region there to make sure they don't really make this connector element look bad. But there you have them. We can now add material parameters to each category or to each element. Let's go to here, edit this family again, back to the trunk now. I can now select this object. Under material, I can now click on this little button at the end and make a material parameter. Bring this back into the tree family now. And we can repeat the same thing, but this time for the connector family. So get the solid object and turn this into material. Back to here. That's ready. Now before we try and place it in a project, I should try to flex my height parameter. If I go to here, I can see no parameter for changing how high this connector group will be relative to my crowd. This is when we need to make this extra parameter. Let's turn on wireframe again. And then select this connector point there. If you look under its properties, there's an offset parameter there. And that's the offset between this point and the point it's hosted on. Remember, that was point number 1. So now we can turn this into another parameter as well. Let's call this connector height. And now if I try to change it from here, maybe to 8.5, you see now it's getting much higher. Anyway, I kind of like 7.5. Let's put it back there. Alright. We can now try to bring in some materials, but we can also do it in a project, so let's not worry about this for now. Instead, let's try to place it so we can have an array of trees like this, making the whole system complete. Let's go to File now, New, Family. And this time you want to start from this conceptual mass template. To place this family quickly a few times from a promenade, you need to have some guide curves. I will try the first one like this. Just trying to replicate the shape I used in the example that you saw at the beginning. Entirely up to you, by the way, if you want to have a different shape. But at the minimum, you should have 2 curves, slightly offset images of one another, like this. I can now select this middle one, along with its placement points. And then in the front view, just move it down slightly. Here we go. And then I can select all of them like this, and then move them up by 10 meters. Finally, this middle one, I want to copy it down as well, along with the placement points. And the copy should be lying on the ground plane. That will do. Save this now under test 1, I guess. And it's time now to place our family into the project. Or more precisely, into the mass family. We will later on place that mass in the project, but for now it has to go through this step. So let's now load this into the mass family test 1. And try to place it on those lines. You can see now something funny is happening. When I try to place it, it's kind of lying down. It doesn't want to do any work. But luckily we can fix this quickly. Let's go back into the family now. I'll show you how. It all has to do with the orientation of our adaptive points. If I go back to wireframe now and select this first point there, the orientation is now set to instance XYZ. That means if you snap this point to a geometry instance, such as the other curve in the mass family, this point will get its X, Y, and Z axis from the X, Y, and Z point along that line. And that may not be always vertical for the Z axis, that's why you see it lying down, just like before. For this to work, we have to change it from instant XYZ to global Z and then host XY. What that means is, the placement point will take the global Z direction. That ensures it will always be vertical and pointing up. But then in terms of X and Y coordinates, it will just get whatever X and Y point along that curve that you are placing it to. We can do the same now for the other 4 placement points. I can quickly get them all like this and filter for only adaptive points. And here, change them all to global Z and then host XY. Let's see it in action again in test 1. We go to create component. And you can see now it's going in the wrong direction, those branches, but the trunk is there. However, I wouldn't worry so much about the branches because eventually we will use the other 4 adaptive points to get their direction and orientation right anyway. So I can start placing them like this, click once, and then 4 more times to get my 4 branches in place. You see now it's getting better. No longer funny branches pointing to the ground. That's our tree family there. So if you want to just place them one by one like this, those trees are ready. But how about we try to make sure we can just array one tree quickly along the same path to make the whole system into a quick and easy promenade that you can create in seconds. Let's try that now. I can remove this one first and turn those 4 curves into divided paths. Just get them like this and click on this divide path button there. Now you see they have divided points along their lines. I can now go to here and change the number of points on each curve to 12. You can go for more if you like. I just want to go for a small one for now to avoid crashing my computer if I place too many of those trees. We can now go and create our tree again. But this time, let's make sure it's gonna start from one of the endpoints of this system. Let's use the left hand point there. I can now place it here. And then 4 more times to control the position of my branches. Make sure you snap to the points. Those circular snapping icon should be there before you click. Here we go, looking great. When I now select this, because this is now hosted on divided paths, on the ribbon I can have now available my repeater button. Let's click it. And it repeats, as you can see. But not in the way we expected. This is because the number of placement points on each line are the same, but for our tree here, to place it correctly, sometimes we have to skip some points. For example, we didn't use that point there, or this point here, or this point there. Worry not, I can now undo this and show you how to fix this. The key here is to place another tree, so create similar now. With this one, we also have to place it in the same way. So 1 point for the trunk and 4 for the branches. Make sure to skip the points that you want to skip. Here we go. But now, because I have 2 of them, I can select both like this and click on repeater again. Here we go. Well, doesn't look that much better, does it? And I kind of did this on purpose. I'll show you why you have this problem, because you might get it soon. Let me quickly undo this repeater. And now if I select this tree here, the first one, you will see now there are placement points numbers along our tree branches. I know number 1 is always there, because there you can place a trunk. But then I kind of went from here, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm starting on this curve, then the middle one, and the one on the other side, then the middle one again. With the second tree here, is that the same case? Actually no. I mistakenly started, on purpose, from the middle curve there, then to the outer curve, middle again, outer again. To repeat an adaptive components properly, you always have to make sure If you place more than one component to guide the repeater, they need to be placed so that their placement points are in the same order. So now for the second tree, I always have to start my first branch on this curve here. Let's try that. So create similar now. The trunk there, that's an easy one. And now let's see if that's happy for me to repeat. I can now select both, repeat it. And there you have them. You see, things go well when you know the rule. Always place them in the same manner. Now I see this tree here is kind of stretched, so how about we try and fix them. I can now go to the top view like this here. Select those 3 placement points for the curves. Don't forget the bottom one as well, this one here. And now just move them slightly onto this side. You can see now the whole system has regenerated and they look much better now. Because we use divided paths for this operation, I can now also select those paths, all 4 of them, and change the number of divided points to maybe 18. And that gives you a better system as well. See that? Super easy and adaptable. I can now go to the project browser as well. Under families, GM, tree number 2. If I go here under its properties, it's easy for me as well to go here and say I want to have the connector a bit lower, maybe by 500. And that will do it for me. Now if you want to change their material, super easy as well. To do this, let's go back to our trunk family. And in here, if you still remember, we have this material parameter here for this object. I can now check out the tree family where it's loaded in. Select this, go to edit type, and now that's the same parameter. But we cannot link it to a new parameter in this host family because that's still a type parameter. Let's go back here now and change it to be instance. Alright, and load it back into our tree number 2 family. When I now select this, under material now, I have this button to link it to this new trunk material. Click OK to confirm. And we can do the same for our connector element. So connector material, set that from type to instance again. And load it into our tree. When I now select this, and then right click, select all in the view, I can now make them use the same parameter there for material. I'll link it to connector material. Here we go. We can now do the same for our branches, select them like this as well. And in here, you can either make a new parameter here, but for now I'll just use the same one for the trunk. Here we go. Let's now load this back into our test mass family. When you see this message, basically it's saying that the nested components for the trunks and the connectors, they are also here in the mass family. Do you want to override them as well? Yes, please. Alright, all loaded. If I now go here under generic models, I can now check out my tree too. Double click on this to change properties for the type. And now they are here, connector and trunk material parameters. I will change them in the project later on. For now, let's go and make a new project file. Okay. We can now load this mass family here into our project model, project number 2. When you see this, that's fine to dismiss. And now just click anywhere to place our mass family. Now that's in. If I go now to a 3D view, my mass family is there, ready for me to render and create drawings from. If you want to see as well how to make those top surfaces for the glazing, we can go back to the family now, select the divided paths, and just hide them for a moment. I can now select those lines in pairs. First pair, those 2, create form. And now the second pair, create form as well. Bring this now back into my project. When I go now to the 3D view, I have now surfaces, so I can create current system from. Let's go to current system. click on the surfaces, select them like so, and then create system. Doesn't look very curvy at the moment, but I can now select this system and go to edit type, change grid 1 layout to be maximum spacing with a smaller spacing value, maybe 1000. And this one as well, maximum spacing, but maybe just slightly bigger. Here we go. Very nice indeed. Now, if you look closely, there are just a few final elements we may want to clean up. For example, this curve here and those points on it, I don't really want to see them in my project. Let's go back to the mask family now and fix it. The points you see, there are those divided points here on the divided paths. I can now reset the view like so. Select everything and filter only for divided paths. Isolate them in view like this. And now when I click on one of them, you can use this little arrow here to open the representation of the path window. If you want to, now we can untick the nodes and don't see them in our project. The same thing can be done now for the other paths. Only issue is you have to do it one by one, because when you select more than one path, this arrow won't show up. So only one at a time for now. Here we go. I can now load this back into my project. And that looks much cleaner already. But the curve's still there. Let me go and click on this curve as well. Press tab to get the curve, otherwise you're only getting the divided path. So tap now. And that's the line I want to get. Let's now untick this visible box. It's a bit grayish now. That means if I now load it back into here, that should now disappear. And it did. Go to 3D now. And that's much cleaner. No more straight points. Now for the final touches. I can of course change the material now. Just tap to select one of my columns. And then go to edit type. You see those parameters still there. I can now select the connector object. And maybe change that to use copper. It may not be so realistic, but I just want to get a different color so you can see the connector clearly. And for the trunk, let's get something brighter, like aluminium. Okay. Looking better now, just the copper is a bit dark. If I go now to copper again, I can now set this to use the render color. And there you have them. If you like tutorials like this every single day, make sure to subscribe to this channel. For now, practice this whole thing with adaptive components, and I'll see you in the next video.